What's going on, everyone? It's Mitch from respectmyregion.com coming back with another episode of the RMR podcast today, joined by special guest Carter Latimer of PaperPlanes. How you doing today, Carter?
I'm good. What's up? How you doing?
Man, I'm doing all right, man. I'm doing all right. We're going to talk about a little bit about your journey, a lot of things, cannabis, concentrates, and that entire space. But before we dive too much into concentrates, man, I start every episode off with our guest origin story around the plant being cannabis.
Yeah.
Whether that's personal, professional, a little bit of both. Just curious when you and cannabis started seeing one another, if you will.
It really came into my life when I turned 18. Like throughout high school, my dad was a basketball coach. And so I was playing sports in high school. Like it wasn't a big thing. We'd do like off season sessions and shit like that. And I guess that was kind of the first time I would get high with my friends. And at that point, like your first time getting high for me, it was just like laughter attacks. I mean, like an eating, kind of like the classic, symptoms of getting stoned for your first time. But I didn't feel like I was functional at all. And I felt super like paranoid. I wanted to be in a safe environment when I did it. It was like something that I wasn't doing all the time. I was fucking with it in the off season, but it wasn't something I felt like I could like bring into my everyday life yet, especially at that point. But then, after I graduated high school, my sister was always in the scene. So I had an older sister. She was about 5 years older than me. And she had a couple of homies that grew in Grass Valley. And that's where I'm from, a little small town nestled in the Sierra foothills, like an hour outside of Sacramento. And the friends that she had in town were like, unbeknownst to me, really, really dope growers, right? Like I just got lucky. She talked to me when I was 18 and was like, yo, you can go get your script at the doctor's office and we'll post it for you at my friend's property. At the end of the year, we'll give you either like $3,000 or we'll give you a pound of weed. And I was like, at the time I was like, is this cool? Like, I didn't really know what the fuck was going on. She's like, no, it's straight. You won't get in trouble. Like they're all legit. They all got cooperatives. And kind of, if you remember at that point, this is 2004, 2005, most growers like in these small towns like Grass Valley and Humboldt, they had to post like some ungodful amount of scripts at their property to be able to prove that they could grow the plants that they had on site. And so you had growers that would source like all these kids in town, right? And that was one of them. It was just like, go get your script. We'll pay you $200. We'll post your shit. It's a little bit of a risk to you, but not much. Like I'm the owner of the farm. And at the end of it, we'll give you a pound of weed or a few $1,000. So that was kind of the first like introduction to that world. I was like, all right, fuck it. Let's do it. I went into the doctor's office, the whole deal, made up 10 different things of what was wrong with me. The doctor in our town was actually kind of legit. That's the thing, is I had to really go prove like that I had like headaches or like pain or some shit. And I'm thinking like, oh, this is supposed to be easy. And then it turns into like a nerve-wracking appointment of like questioning, like interrogation, and like, oh, like this isn't, what I thought it would be. But eventually, got all my records. I needed like 80 pages of medical records and all this shit that I sent over to him. Finally got the script and yeah, we posted it. And then 6 months flew by. It was the summer of my senior year. And I had the choice at the end of the year to either take weed or take cash. And at the time, you could break down like a pound of good outdoor and sell it for like $1,000 a QP, if not more, So like I was intrigued the idea that I didn't have any money at that time. Like I'm 18, dude. My dad was a teacher. My mom's like a retail and a home care nurse type of lady. Like I've never had money. My family never had money. So like even a few grand to my name was a big deal. And I was thinking, shit, I could get like another 1,000 or 2,000 if I just take this weed, like maybe I should try this. But I didn't have any plugs, I wasn't like connected or anything. So I was a little weary to do it. But my sister, she was kind of just like, giving me the confidence I needed to be like, try it out, like give it a shot, just take the weed. And I did. And I ended up meeting like a homie who I worked with at Olive Garden, actually, in Sacramento when I moved to college down there. And I lived with my sister and just like bussing tables, met people who I could sell weed to. And I'll never forget the dude. His name was, we called him Filthy Phil. And Filthy Phil was the first person I ever sold weed to. he was just like a busser in Olive Garden, and I broke that down, and shit, I was like off after that. I was off to the races, bro.
Shout out Phil at the Olive Garden, man.
Yeah. I still talk to him here and there. He texts me, and so we stay in contact. I'm not sure what he's up to these days, but it's like that first plug and that first realization that you're like, oh, like, damn, I just made 4 or 5 grand. You know, I'm not making much at Olive Garden, right? You're like,
Right.
I don't think this is, what I want to do now. All of a sudden your life changes pretty quick. You're like, damn, like this is not the value that I should be getting out of shit, working whatever, $15 an hour, $12 an hour. Like I can't afford my college shit or rent or like go take a girl out on a date, dude. Like you can't do anything with that type of money. So like instantly when you're that young and you have just a little bit of money, it's like you feel great. I felt like I had everything in the world and freedom, and like those things are what really kept me going, dude. That's what kept me like sparked on it. I was like, damn, this is nice. Like got a little money to move with. I'm in college. Like let's keep going, dude. And from that point, like I really just became like, I don't know, I would do anything, bro. I sat around trim tables a lot. I would trim. Back then they were paying trimmers $200 a pound. Like I could trim 2 or 3 pounds in a day if I grinded. So like I'd turn 400, 500, 600 bucks a day, sit around trim tables, like learn from the growers that my sister put me in touch with. And eventually, found my way to a couple grows, started managing the grows. I ended up moving to college out in Reno from SAC. And that kind of presented another opportunity, in a different state. Things change from California to Nevada. And so we finally hustled in college and kind of got our shit together, and things were going really well. But it's funny, like it's about to graduate college, been hustling for 4 or 5 years. Things are good. And I realized like, dude, I'm about to get a teaching degree for social studies. Because that's what my dad did, like my dad was a teacher. Like you just kind of follow what you know. And that's what I knew up until that point. And I always hated school. Like I didn't even know why I was in college, really. I just knew that my parents wanted me to finish college. And so I figured like, fuck it. Like this is really for them. Like they think it's going to provide something for me in my life. Like whatever, let's get it done. And I couldn't stand every second of it, bro. And by the time I got to graduating college, we kind of had some heat on us in Reno. So like it was to the point where I was like, I think I'm gonna quit hustling because like this shit's getting risky. Right. And so my homies and I kind of had like a heart to heart, and we're just like, dude, we're about to graduate college. I spent 6 years trying to graduate. So like for me, it was a long journey. And I really wanted to kind of clean up at that point and figure out like maybe there is something I can do with my life besides just like hustling weed, which is super risky. And at that point, I kind of left the plan alone. That was the first time, from the time of like 18 to 24 that I guess I was too paranoid, really. Like I was just tripped out by the idea of going to jail. That shit like scared me. I felt like, okay, at this point I got to change. I got to do something different, and got into real estate for a few years.
So when did you start finding your way to cannabis concentrates?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a story. Thanks for bearing with me. Like at that point, I worked that shitty real estate job for about 2 years and was miserable, depressed. Like the idea of working for someone, even though this was like my friend's family, I hated it. I couldn't stand it. I didn't feel like I was really like doing what I was supposed to be doing. And I was always smoking weed during that time. So this is in Sacramento. I'm purchasing shit off weed maps like daily. I've just like always been a consumer in that regard, where I'm spending money on things that I like. And like weed was something that I fucking loved, and I wanted to find the best weed. So like I'd always source shops all over Sacramento to find, who had the best flower. And at that point, wax popped up on the menu. So it was kind of like a weird thing where it's like, what is this shit? But it was 40 or 50 bucks a gram. Like even back then, dude, this is like 2010, probably somewhere around there. I was blown away that there could be a weed price like that per gram. It was fucking crazy to me because there was like water hash on the menus, but nobody smoked it. It was garbage. And it was like $5 a gram or some shit. So that really sparked my interest. That was the first thing where I was like, damn, what is this? Started researching right away, got on YouTube, got on Facebook. There was a really cool group on Facebook called the Great Glob Society. And these were like a group of extractors like myself who would come together to share knowledge and to kind of share ideas about how to make butane hash oil. That's essentially what it was, is what we ended up figuring out. Like wax is made with butane. And how is that done? You got to take, these glass tubes, cans of butane, pack these things full of either trim or larf or small bud, put some coffee filters on the end, get a Pyrex dish, and get after it. And really, that's how it started. It was just that, intriguing to me to know that there was a product selling on Weed Maps that I knew tons of people with the input of that product, right? Where this is another like key part to starting the business. Farms at this time are throwing away trim.
Right.
Okay. It's a big issue for a farm to have extra trim on their property. When they get raided, the cops aren't specifying, oh, this is trim pounds versus this is dried flour. The charge is all the same for these motherfuckers. So like they're calling me at this point and I'm asking them for trim and they're like, dude, come get it. I want this shit off my property. It's free. Like no big deal. And at that point I was like, okay, cool. So I have all this like great material that I can play with, really is how I looked at it at the time. And I was like, I'm just going to take this and start fucking around with it and start seeing if I can like make a product that I could dab that is different from the shit I'm seeing in the stores.
I love that, man. I remember those days of the trim. I used to get the black Glad bag. I always tell everyone for $20, $20 a bag of trim. I'd shake it for keef, and then I'd resell the trash bag into grocery bags for $25 a grocery bag. I don't know what people made edibles with them or what, but
no, I love it. And that's the thing is like nobody realized how much of this trash is really treasure and really could be turned into something that a consumer and myself would love, like it just took a lot of care and attention, which we learned later of how to handle the trim, how to extract it, things like that, down the line that we learned. But in the beginning, it was just like, let's just try to play. And really we found out early on about de-waxing extracts. That was like something that not a lot of people were doing, especially while you're open blasting. So we would open blast into, like essentially like chest freezers that were filled with dry ice and alcohol. And then we would set kind of like this cup, just a mason jar in that cooler, and you would blast your butane into this mason jar that was sitting at like -110. And once you got all the butane in there, you would put the lid on, you let it sit for a couple hours, and you would take a thing called a Buechner funnel, which is a super, rudimentary chemistry thing. And you just pour that butane solution through there, and it catches all of the contaminants like chlorophyll, all that plant matter, the waxes, the fats, like things that really fucking ruin an extract's flavor and their smoothness. Those were what we found out early on. And that really set it off to where like, let's start a company. Once we learned that, I was like, we got to start, gramming this shit out and going to clubs with it.
Yeah, that's definitely early because those original, the first time I always saw dabs was always, it was like damn near black. You know what I mean? It was not an attractive color.
Yeah, it was rough for us in the beginning too. Like what's cool about our company and what we've done is like we've had to learn from the ground up and build it from the ground up. Like we started with shatter and pressure pots with like these Harbor Freight pumps, and then eventually we learned, oh my God, there's like these used vac ovens online that you can get. We bought a vac oven. We're like one of the first people with that. Then we learn about, oh, these Harbor Freight pumps, they have way too much oil in them. We got to get an oilless pump to like lessen the contamination in our room. And things like that just kept like building on. The gas itself, like being able to source a 120-pound tank of butane versus, using a can of butane, right? Yeah. Like that became a fucking big issue. And all these steps and things we were learning along the way, it's really what makes our company different. Like we have a group of people that care about the plant, that love hash, and that have really been from day one with this movement. and then not stopping. Like, you know, we'll get into what we're doing today, I'm sure later, but like we've still pushed the boundaries today and continue to learn about what we can do to make our product better.
How exciting has it been for you, obviously as a lover of the plant, but to watch that evolution, right? Because you're talking about 2010. I mean, that's like
Yeah.
the dawn of the dab, if you will, right? Like the start of that entire art form. And
Yeah.
it's grown significantly, but you know, just curious, kind of your just personal excitement level of watching that evolution, then also just like where you see legalization and rec, and like has that helped kind of speed up that evolution and progress cycle?
You know, so just for the first part of the question, I was extremely excited to be able to get terpenes that were clearly tasting different than a joint. That was like the thing that got me like, holy shit. Like I can't believe that you can pull whatever strain it is, these terps in a concentrated form where they're tasting like candy or whatever like that fruit is that you know, fruit strain you extracted or gas strain. It's like those were moments that, yeah, I was like, holy shit, this is incredible. And then to be part of that and then like sharing knowledge with friends about what they were doing and then seeing the glass blowing community like develop into crazy, like where people are buying $40,000 rigs and shit like that. Like to see it from, yeah, from tubes and cans of butane and like skillets and, you know, just dirty dabbing, dude. I mean, that's how it started. This shit was not clean. Like, it takes a real crazy motherfucker to even like take his first dab around that time.
Right.
Like you had to be doing some wild shit in your life, which I was. Like I wasn't your normal like sober dude how I am today. Let's just put it that way. Like back then I was partying, doing all types of shit, and like, yeah, dude, torch, rig, like let's fucking get it. But my friends and family were like, dude, you're a fucking crackhead. Like that shit was like, it was crazy. So like it took kind of a weird, you know, group of individuals to kind of break the boundaries and be okay with this. And I think what did it is the lovers of the plant like understood that even though this was a little wild and out there, that there was something very special going on when you extracted, you know, those terps. And then what was the second part of your question? I forgot. It was
just curious how you think the progression has sped up since legalization has spread and recreational cannabis has came about.
Yeah. So unfortunately, like I really feel that legalization really halted a lot of innovation and, you know, just like moving our product category forward simply because if you remember 2017 is really like the end of the 215 era here in California. In 2017, you had live resin dabbables selling for like 90 to $100 a gram. You had like companies that were really, really focused on the plant, providing multiple SKUs, high quality, a lot of competition, like thick, profitable small businesses, all doing really well. It was a beautiful thing. Like Prop 215 was amazing. And then when Prop 64 comes, you have huge barriers to entry, huge multi-million-dollar barriers. And like they're really hard to cross for most folks. Like a lot of people like myself that were running businesses, you know, and hustling and doing their thing, we didn't know the first thing about like, you know, real regulation, licensing, administration, accounting, like you name it. Like we were very focused on like making good weed or good hash and finding a plug, using that plug. That's it. It's like a simple game. Once you like legalization came and you had tons of capital being dumped into this industry, it changed overnight the way people do business. You know, so it affected us in a really negative way. I mean, like for our category specifically, you had like every main extractor who was the shit drop out. Like just to name a few, like Gold Coast extracts. They were so fucking big from like 2012 to 2017. I think they have the most awarded strain and high times history, which doesn't mean much today, but back then kind of meant a lot still. I think it got like first place like 30 or 40 times or some shit. Those guys don't have a legal lab today or a brand. Like that's a prime example of like what the fuck happens there. Like why is it that like one of the best extract companies in California couldn't make it into that legal, you know, that legal market? And like I imagine the answers are all of the above. It's so many barriers to entry and the capital and like organization and and then like being legit and not being like, kind of like a libertarian business owner, like plugging into the system, doing everything by the book. Like a lot of really, really great hash and weed companies, they didn't want to make that transition. And so for the recreational market, it took a hit as far as like the offerings of what's available to consumers. Like before, I loved going into shops and I spend a lot of my money in shops buying the weed and the hash. And today it's much harder to find those drops throughout, a recreational store. You still have like the main heady smokers still are on the black market,
Mhm.
Yeah. So it's been tough. It's been challenging, but it is what it is. Things are moving forward. You can't change it.
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
And that's a good take on it, because I think there's pros and cons to everything, but I think with legalization has come like a little bit, more accessible to get information, and less risk tolerance in sharing of said information. But like you said, there are definitely some barriers that have been put up, and I like, this industry was birthed from the shadows, and
Mhm.
the lessening of the ability to operate and experiment in the shadows, definitely I think can slow things down. And that's something with you guys now at Paper Planes, or have obviously diversified quite a bit from just concentrates to pre-rolls. I know you got like the like the beverage additive,
Mhm.
and cartridges, things of that nature. Where do
Yep.
you find like inspiration in creating new product types?
I'm very focused on flavor and smoothness are the two things that I focus on for all of our products. Like, so the inspiration, I mean, there's something in me. I'm not sure what it is, man. It's like I really, really love cannabis extracts to the point where, like, I spend all my time videoing them or taping them or playing with them or smoking them. It's like, I don't know really where that inspiration comes from. It's like something inside. I think most entrepreneurs, when they find a product or an idea that they like, there's like that ambition just pushing them, behind them. And from day one, I felt like this is going to be something back in 2010. And I knew it would go legal at some point. So that was kind of the vision, and the inspiration was like, look, we'll grind this out while things are crazy. Eventually, this shit's going to be legal throughout the entire world. Why not be at the beginning of it and, start with that right now?
And we're talking about a little bit offline, but you're growing in Grass Valley, and doing some single source stuff. What is kind of the take been on that, and what are some of the opportunities and the obstacles in going single source for concentrates?
Yeah, so the reason behind the decision to go single source was mainly that I had done collaborations, I think, with every major cultivator in the industry that I wanted to do collaborations with up until that point. And if you know anything about the hash game, a lot of it is ran off collabs. Like it's kind of crazy actually, but you have extractors like myself who go run around to the best growers in California, and like 7 of us are all competing for the same trim or the same material. It's kind of wild, like we all know each other, we all talk to the same people, and we all know when there's fresh drops coming out. So you're calling, and then like we're slowly like driving the price up between one another, right? So the growers love it. Like, don't get me wrong, the growers are like sick. Like, this is great. I got 7 extractors all competing for my material. Like, who wants it? But for us, like for me doing it for a decade and now like getting into a more like legalized structured business, I don't want to build a business that's so attached to other businesses, if that makes sense. So like the decision to get our own farms, that was a big input of why we did it. The other reason why we did it is because Grass Valley is a very unique place. Like geographically on the map, the elevation, the sun, the humidity, all these things kind of combined. And then with the knowledge of the growers in that town, people have learned how to grow really, really high quality mixed light depth greenhouse weed for a very affordable price. It's like, I think it's unique that the elements up there are like all in your favor. And if you're a good grower and you know how to work with them, you can kind of make magic happen. And that's how a lot of people in my town made it all the way, up until 2018 when this legalization shit hit. Was like, dude, they could plant, 36 plants and they'd have like 12-pound plants. right? And at the price of weed at that time, you're like, yeah, you're doing something that's extremely profitable, that doesn't take a lot of legwork. It's, you know, it's easy in some respect. It's not easy, but like it's much easier than fighting battles in other climates and things like that. So like when you go, you know, closer to Humboldt, you're closer to the sea, right? That coast up there, you get all that humidity. Mendocino, same thing. Santa Barbara, you go to all these areas, none of them are like Grass Valley. And like, if you know hustlers in the game who've been coming to our town for years, they know like Grass Valley had the best weed, like versus Humboldt. That's really like our competition. It was like, if you're a plug and you're coming to California to get either outs or you're coming to get depots, you're coming to one of those two places. And like, we always heard that, we kind of always knew it. And so I think that being, you know, a huge part of my background was also like, okay, this is it. This is what we got to do. We got to put Grass Valley on the map. We have to use this really high quality, affordable way of growing weed to feed all of our product SKUs, you know, which are what you mentioned before, the vape cartridges, live and cured dabbables, a beverage enhancer, and then pre-rolls and flower products as well. But like having control over those things where Christian's the breeder and the grower up there. He's the founder of Finest Cannabis. He's since left Finest Cannabis, but he was the original founder and breeder over there with them. He's the guy who is now part of PaperPlanes and working on this project with me. And together, like, he's able to breed shit that I'm able to extract, and together we can like look at it and be like, oh, is this special, right? Is this something we want to make a staple? Which I think many companies do a great job of, but still everybody's trying to attempt to get their staple strains in. Like, what is going to make PaperPlanes? Like, yeah, you can go get, you know, whatever flavor we offer hundreds of flavors every year, but how are we going to get you 10 that, you know, come from us that you love and they're going to be the same every single time? Consistency is such a big deal in our industry. It's like, because it's a live plant, because of how sensitive it is, not every harvest is the same.
Mm-hmm.
You have so much variety in a consumer getting a product, right? Like, that's a problem. It's a big fucking problem. When you go buy anything, it's not like that. It's the same every time, right? Whereas weed is this really unique thing that is hard to kind of standardize. But that's what we're attempting to do with this, is we're going to find things that we love, like a great OG Kush cut, right? Like, that's never going away. But for some reason, like, people don't have it anymore. It's disappeared. You can't get it. And like, it's crazy that like you just can't get that really gassy, lemony profile that you want time and time again. And things like that, like developing new strains that, you know, haven't even been out or haven't been heard of. That's a big part of it too. But just getting consistency in our product line, I think, is a huge deal for a consumer. I really feel that consumers are lacking, because you can't go get the same thing every time unless it's a distillate pen, right? And that's why those do so well. Distillate pens with fake terps crush because they're getting the same thing. And if they like it, they go back and they get it again, you know? So that it's tricky, but I think that'd be my spiel on it.
No, that's a great take. A lot of things in there I agree with. When it comes to growing cannabis for concentrates, what kind of, obviously it's a little bit different. You know, I'm not a grower, but I've been around quite a few, so I understand it's a little bit of a different process. What kind of goes into that? And since you guys are making flower products too, do you kind of distinguish just based on strain, or is there some difference in the methodology as well?
Yeah, I mean, Christian does an amazing job. Like, first of all, I'm not the experience up in Grass Valley growing and hustling and trimming. That's not my job. I'm mainly parked at the lab. And Christian has SOPs that are like, it's interesting. His flower just throws terps. Like, when we extract it and we do a sauce run, if you know anything about it, the sauce will break down into THCA crystals and a terpene layer, right? The terpene layer, when he grows, is like just far outweighing the potency sometimes, which, like, to some people it's like, oh, I want the potency. Our goal is to get you that amazing flavor. And if we need to add in more like diamonds or something to a batter or a vape cart to make it more potent, that's a very easy thing to do. What's very hard is getting that real flavor out of there.
What are some of your favorite strains to grow specifically for concentrates?
I mean, I'm still like, this is same really like a dank OG Kush, like that White Walker OG that we used to extract from Cannabiotics, which they still have in the rotation, but I don't know if it's the same cut. That still to this day, I think would be the best probably hash anybody would like. I mean, it used to taste like just OG Kush concentrated, and some like extracts had tried to do that, but this one was just different. It just watered your mouth with lemon OG Kush, and like usually every connoisseur kind of like that. So like having a good cut of OG, a good cut of headband, like the sour diesel mixed in with that OG on the like 707 headbands. Those are still some of my favorites to this day. Today there's so many strains coming at us. Like Christian is growing so many that, those are the ones that still stick to me. There's nothing new that I'm like stoked on. Like I would still love original Girl Scout cookies, like the real cut of like the Forum or like the Private Reserve that we used to see. You don't see any real cookies anymore. That used to extract amazing and make dank hash. OGs, and then like Skittles, just straight Skittles though, like none of the bullshit mixed in. Like I don't need any other things. Just that straight Z terp is still probably one of the best terps in the industry. Like these standards haven't gone anywhere, and there hasn't been anything new that's taken their place. Like, yeah, you got Runts and you got Zushi right now making a pretty big wave. But like, dude, I look at those strains and you dab them, you taste them. It's just the same old Z Runts type of shit that you've been getting for years. And I prefer just the original Z. It's like, just give me that. I don't think anything's beaten that yet. So we play around with all the new shit that's coming in and try to breed it and get our own take on it. And then like, as far as just doing things differently, I mean, we get to freeze all our weed, right? So that's a big deal. Like not having to process the weed cuts down on cost tremendously. That's something new when you're growing for extracts, which most people know, but it's just like a huge fucking cost efficient thing where like, I don't know, right now with weed, it's $600 a pound, 700 a pound, and you're paying a trimmer 160. How does that add up?
Right.
That doesn't, dude. That's crazy. You're telling me I got to pay whatever percentage for a fucking trimmer to get my weed to market? Like, no, that's wild. So like as the price compression keeps, working in our industry and working down, extracts and vape carts and like these beverage enhancers, I think are the category where you're still going to be able to find high quality and affordable, which is like a very rare occurrence. But I think that's what we're building, is like we're building high quality and affordability.
And obviously, like you said, with the collabs, a lot of those have been kind of small batch. Now that you guys are producing your own cannabis, I take it still somewhat small batch in terms of you're not cultivating just a single strain, right? So what's kind of that approach to small batch and like, I guess before you get into that, can you define what craft cannabis means to you?
Yeah, to me, like a craft garden is no larger than 10,000 square feet of canopy. That's how I would define it. I think once you get up into half an acre of weed on one property, I mean, if you got a really tight team, I suppose that it could still be considered craft. But if you're like even a little off your game and you got an acre of weed, it gets, there's some shit that kind of starts overhanging and, getting left to the side. And next thing your harvest isn't quite as good. And then you have like drying space. All this shit comes into play. Like the larger the farm, the larger the infrastructure you need. And a lot of times people are building these farms without the infrastructure in place to do the drying, to do these things, because it's expensive. So I would say like, yeah, for that, it's about 10,000. And then for extracts, I think, a small batch is really like anything where your yield is equivalent to around 1,000 grams. So say if you run like, I don't know the math off my top of my head, but I think like 40 pounds of fresh frozen at like a 4% yield gets you around 1,000 grams. So if you're running a 40-pound batch of fresh frozen, that's pretty craft. Like for us, like we have a Busy Bee system. We can load probably about 40 pounds per run when we're doing it. And that's a single run. And the same thing applies when you get into these closed loops. The larger they get, you're getting farther and farther away from craft because you can't really control all of the, parameters, whether it's in the garden or in the booth on these pieces of equipment. It gets extremely difficult to control chilling and like things like that, that you get out of that craft zone. So I would say, yeah, that's kind of how I define it.
What do you think is the next step in the evolution of concentrates that whether you think it's something that personally excites you or you're just something you think that the market's going to latch onto?
Um, you know, what's coming from overseas right now in Spain is like that piatella. Have you seen that
Mhm.
stuff?
Yeah.
That's making a big wave in the rosin world. And we've washed rosin in the past. We don't commercially launch it yet. Just haven't crossed that bridge, but I think we will in the future. But seeing that in the rosin world, I think is really exciting because they're taking that water hash and they're getting it to be like greasy, like a cake at room temperature, not like hard and scrapey when you're trying to get those heads out of a jar, but it really is all melting together. And they're getting like these loaves, which they post online, and they cut them up with a knife, and like that looks super fire. I would imagine if I was a rosin extractor, that's like all I would be chasing right now. That's on the map for sure. And then with BHO on our side of things, like I think the coolest thing to come about recently is a couple extractors, us included, have figured out how to really pull live resin type terpenes off of really fresh indoor trim. So this is kind of a new occurrence where like most of the trim material was going to shatters or like cured concentrates or things, and not really being able to provide a consumer the taste or like the smoothness of a live resin product. Well, like recently in the past couple of years, one of the companies that does it really well is Cold Fire Extracts. They do
Mhm.
vapes in California. And when we see a company do something well that we're not doing, like we're instant to be like, oh, this is really cool. Like this is amazing. We kind of fit in this too. How can we figure this out? So for the past like year and a half, we're like, let's play more with terps, figure out how to get this, this terpene layer essentially out of trim that's still dank and tastes really good. And we did that by utilizing just like even colder temperatures than we were at before, finding out on some like new equipment shit that was happening. And now we're releasing vape carts and cured dabbables that taste like live resin. I think that's what's most exciting for our category in vapes. The dabbables, BHO dabbables are having a hard time because of CRC. So I don't like think there's going to be, much innovation in that category right now, but vapes specifically, being able to provide a consumer with a vape for $20 that tastes like a live resin cart that's right now priced at 45, I think is a game changer. And that's what we plan to launch, this coming August and through the rest of the year, is a lot of cured cartridges with this new tech. So consumers can have what we're pitching, which is that high quality live resin taste and flavor and potency, but not the price.
Just fraction of the cost.
Yeah, exactly.
That's obviously where the market is going in general right now with just the economy and everything, right? Like the value products are what's moving.
That's
Um,
right. And they always have, actually. Like, dude, like when we go into shops back in the day and you knew shop owners, they'd be like, bro, 80% of my business is from like $100 ounces.
right.
That's what I sell to the homies. Like, yeah, your shit here, $100 gram shit, it sells, but like it's not doing numbers like this. And like that's been a constant forever. It's just that, like, I don't know, people are paying attention more now to it, where they realize finally, like, no, dude, people don't have the money to pay for a $70 eighth or, an $80 gram, or even like a $40 eighth or a $50 gram if they smoke like stoners do. Like,
Right.
it's funny, like weed's also so different in regard where like if you're an alcoholic, you're probably not going to be that productive, and you probably don't need like tons of weed or dabs throughout your day. Like maybe you're drinking a little bit of your like cheap $5 vodka or your Bud Light or whatever, and like you're getting through. But for weed guys, like, dude, I smoke like 3 grams of oil a day, maybe a quarter of weed. Like if I were to put that on recreational prices, my weed budget would be like 20 grand a month, dude. Like who the fuck, if you're not like a millionaire, who can afford this shit, really? And so like I think all of us, when I say us, cultivators, manufacturers, brand owners, we really kind of lost contact with the market a little bit, which is like, dude, do you want to sell like hundreds and thousands of these units, or do you want to sell a few? Like I want to sell hundreds and thousands. Like I want PaperPlanes to be everywhere one day. Like we're starting in California. We've got some deals going in Florida, but like I think we want it everywhere. And in order to do that, you have to keep a consumer in mind of like, what can they spend every day on that product? And the number is really what we've found is like, it's anywhere from $15 to $25. When you have a product at that price, consumers are happy with it. They're willing to buy it every day and like, they're willing to stock up on it. But it's really hard to get that when you're slanging super expensive products. So we've shifted our mind on that over the past couple of years for sure.
No, I love that. And that's a great point. I mean, the hype, I think all of us in the culture love the hype, buy into it when products live up to it. Right.
Yeah.
And for us, it's always been about good flavor, good weed. But I think for a lot of us, we've always been real close to the commerce of said products. So we don't really pay those retail prices, and I think you hit the nail on the head. If you're
right.
smoking in volume, you just simply can't. And I think it's always, to your point, I've always said this, everyone's always had whatever their quality standard is, they're always looking for the best price.
Yeah.
Somewhere close to that quality standard, but the best price. Like you will go get a deal on the same thing if you can, because you're going to smoke it all.
And you highlighted a good point, which is all of us know each other, and that was our circle. So we're all like giving free weed away to each other all the time, and you don't conceptualize what your habit was. But like, I remember I did it one year and I was like, oh my God, like, I know I do take some dabs out of my lab, but like, is it that fucking many? Like, is that the dollar amount? I kind of had to have a realization where like, damn, this is my habit. And then like, how is anyone going to do this? And that's when it really switched for me, man.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's a great point. And I think it's very important for operators to understand that, because even looking at these newer markets, companies build entire business plans built on, product prices that are just unrealistic. You might see that at the start of legalization, but whether you're, gray market, black market, rec market, prices come down, man. Competition brings the prices down everywhere.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
Carter, man, well, I really appreciate your time today, man. For people out there that want more information, at paperplanes.extracts on Instagram. Is there anything else you'd like to plug before I get you up out of here, man?
No, that was really fun. I enjoyed our conversation, man. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, man. So for everyone out there, if you're watching on YouTube, the subscribe button is somewhere underneath Carter over there. If you listen on Spotify, Apple, go ahead and follow this podcast. Check out some past episodes. We got new stuff coming out every week. And then also every day of the week, new stories dropping at respectmoreregion.com. Appreciate everyone for tapping in today. Shout out the Olive Garden. Shout out Filthy Phil. Shout out PaperPlanes Extracts, man.